everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. I know we have been gone for a while, as you can see, because I've forgotten to introduce myself and forgotten to let Alex introduce himself. But Alex has been traveling, moving. Here in Florida, we've been dodging hurricanes left and right. So we'll have a catch-up episode soon. But first, we wanted to do an important one about the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. So I'm sure everybody watching this knows that they just released their results for the 60th edition. So today we're going to specifically talk about the underwater images that were awarded. But first, Alex is going to give a little intro of the competition itself and some background on it. So
I was actually going to start with an apology that if Matthew comes and goes a bit during this, it's not his fault. It's the fact that I don't actually have an internet connection in my house yet. And we're recording this using my phone as internet. And the signal is a bit comes and goes a little bit. And it won't affect me because I'm being recorded locally, but it'll affect my internet issue affects Matt on the call. So if he cuts out at any point, that's my fault. So sorry about that. But yeah, come next week we'll have an internet connection here and we're back to full service. Right, I was going to pull up pictures so you don't have to look at our two ugly mugs for too long. So let me just try and bring it up. And I've got a slideshow of the underwater pictures from this year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year. The Wildlife Photographer of the Year is always a really special event for me. I tuned in and watched the awards ceremony live. I think Matt's already frozen, actually. No, he hasn't. Can you move, Matt? Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I froze for a little bit.
Yeah. I tuned in and watched the live. I'd encourage anyone with an interest in photography, and particularly underwater photography, to always check out the gallery. You can look online and it's fantastic, but even better to grab hold of the book, which we've got on screen here now, or best of all, if you're able to get to London and see the exhibition in the Natural History Museum, it really is a fantastic way to see and spend time with the images, which is definitely the way to see them, is to see them big and to spend time with them. I would also encourage you, if you can't get to London, to try and see one of the exhibitions that are on around the world about the contest. It's something I always try and see every year, whether I'm involved or whether I'm not involved. It's always a big deal in my life. So it's always exciting to talk about it. I felt this year that I thought it was a strong collection overall. And I guess I should say what we're planning to do here. Obviously, being awarded in the Wildlife Photographer is amazing for the photographers. It's an absolute pinnacle competition and career defining for many people to get into that winner's circle. And obviously the pictures are all fantastic photographs, but it's pointless for Matt and I to sit here and just say, these are all great, click, 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 click. It's much more valuable for us to cast a critical eye over the pictures. And I think what a lot of photographers are interested in is maybe for us to analyze what the judges were looking for, because that can help guide future entrants. So, if we're casting a critical eye, it's to try and analyze what the judges went for as much as anything, and talking a little bit about what we like and what we don't like about the photos, because they're out in the public domain now. And I guess now it's our turn to judge the judges as much as judging the photographers. I felt overall it was a strong collection this year. I generally agreed with pretty much all the category winners from what was within the categories, what was elevated up to being category winners. I wasn't the biggest fan of the winner of portraits, although I did enjoy the speech for that. All the mammals thing, I think there were in both categories, there were stronger other shots in the categories. But generally, I was pretty much in agreement with the winners. I was very happy with the overall winner, and we'll come on to that in a second. And I really thought that in terms of underwater photography, that the two portfolios, one of which was completely underwater and one of which had underwater images in, both of those represented some of the strongest photography in the competition. So I really like that. Normally we try and do this as soon as the results come out. But this time, because of our issues of particularly the issue of Hurricane Milton, we're a few days late. And that's meant I've read a bit more coverage of what people have said. And I certainly feel that the underwater photography community is a bit underwhelmed by the underwater pictures in this year's competition. There's certainly been quite a lot of negative comments that they're all not very exciting pictures. So we'll reflect some of that in our coverage here. But that's kind of my opening feeling about it. I don't know what you want to add to that, Matt.
The only thing I want to say is I'll preface this by saying that disclaimer, I have not been awarded in this competition yet, hopefully. So take whatever I have to say with a grain of salt, because there are definitely more qualified people, I would say, to comment on this competition. But hopefully my thoughts are still somewhat valuable.
And do you have any overall feeling from this year's collection? Have you had enough online time to have a good look at them yet?
So I did finally get around to looking at them all yesterday. I think like you said, the overall competition I think was a lot stronger this year than like last year, for example. But I was also a bit, I guess, underwhelmed by the underwater selections. A lot of them are, in particular, in the underwater category. I know some other pictures that were entered in that category, and I'm kind of scratching my head as to how some of those were glossed over. But the judges all have their reasons for picking specific images, and it's not to say that the images in that category aren't without merit. They have them, but we'll go through them one by one and kind of talk about our thoughts about them specifically.
One thing I noticed, actually, just looking at the collection, the Wildlife Photographer awards 100 photos. And I noticed this year that only 7 of that 100 were vertical compositions. I thought that was quite interesting. It's usually much more of an even split. So I don't know if they used like a different projector or the horizontals were bigger when projected than the verticals. I know in the past they've put a lot of effort into making sure they're both the same size. But it did seem very strange this year that they're nearly all horizontal photos that were awarded rather than verticals. And that just may be a complete quirk of it. I noticed that when scrolling through that, it's just everything was horizontal. Right, let's move on to the big news from the competition this year, which is that the overall winner was none other than Shane Gross, friend of the Underwater Photography Show, and a photographer whom both you and I are really big fans of. I'd just say personally, I'm hugely delighted for Shane, and also I can't think of a more deserving photographer in terms of his approach to photography. He's a very thoughtful photographer, but he's also put a lot of effort into expanding the horizons of underwater photography in his own portfolio, and I think his dedication is justly rewarded with this win. So I'm really thrilled for him. I think the picture is a stunning photograph. It's got tremendous depth. It really makes a star out of a very ordinary, everyday subject, but just shows it in a beautiful way. And I think it's a very deserving winner. And when you racked up those category winners together, it must have been in every single person's conversation for overall win. Very well done to Shane. I'm sure you've got some words you want to add to that, Matt.
Yeah, it's almost every competition. I kind of sometimes I'm like, about the overall winner, and I think there's probably a more deserving awarded overall winner. But I love Shane's tadpole pictures. Partially, I'm biased because it's an unusual subject, and I like freshwater environments. But like you said, the depth is amazing. There's that little hallway that goes along the right side of the frame that the tadpoles are all kind of look like they're streaming out of. And it's such a humble little subject, like you said, that has been elevated to take, the biggest prize in wildlife photography, which is really cool. And like you said, Shane's fantastic as a human being. He's an amazing photographer. And I think he does this a lot, where he'll take something that's a relatively mundane subject and somehow make it a very compelling picture, which is evidenced by the fact that he's been awarded everywhere every year. It's a testament to him as a shooter, and it's a perfect example of you don't have to go to far-flung places and travel halfway across the globe to make incredible pictures. I mean, he shot this near his house in a pond. Almost everybody has access to ponds. So I think it's a very, very deserving winner. I was stoked to see that it won, and that tadpoles are getting so much international attention thanks to Shane and his series of this.
I did enjoy him describing tadpoles to people as if they're some weird wildlife that no one's seen when they're a kid, which I thought was quite fun. Um, One thing that I have seen a number of underwater photographers comment about relating to this picture is the fact that it's very similar to Alco Jones, I don't know how to pronounce his name, photo from about 8 to 10 years ago that was in National Geographic at the time and is a very well known photo. Shane's picture, I think, is technically much stronger. And I think Shane himself has said in a number of times that he was inspired to take on this subject after seeing Alco's shots.
Yeah.
I think from a judging perspective, I think I'm surprised that the judges didn't hold that against him a little bit more. I would normally not expect. I think to get to category winner in the wildlife photographer, you wouldn't. The other picture's never been awarded in the wildlife photographer. That's fine. Let's have it as a category winner. To be overall winner, I'm surprised there wasn't more discussion about that. And maybe there was, and maybe the judges said, yeah, okay, it's not been in the wildlife photographer, so although it's a well-known shot, why not have it? But I think that was something also, just to deviate from that point, that a lot of one criticism of this year's collection from the wildlife photographer was that there was quite a few pictures that people had seen before around.
Yeah.
And I think people expect more from the wildlife photographer in that, that there should be more of a penalty for shots that have been around the block. It should be you put them in the wildlife photographer first, and if you don't win there, you try them elsewhere, rather than trying them other places first, and then when they're a good one, try them in the wildlife photographer. It kind of shouldn't really work like that, and the wildlife photographer, I think, should be a bit more against them. That's not a comment on Shane's particularly, but it's a comment on some of the others. But personally, I think it's a fantastic overall winner, and I'm really delighted for him. We had one of these in one of his shots from this series in the underwater photographer of the year earlier in the year. Actually, a very different composition to this one. It has much more of the trees through the surface. The foreground is not dominated by a great sweep of tadpoles as this one. It's a smaller group of them in the foreground with a little bit more connection to the lens. And I think the differences between them actually speak quite a lot between the differences between an underwater photography competition and a wildlife competition. So yeah, great that Shane produced a number of really strong images from this series. Anyway, I'm aware of the time, and we've got a lot of pictures to get to. It's 14 underwater pictures, so we need to up the pace. So the next ones I wanted to speak about was my next favorite underwater photos in the contest was Sage Ono's portfolio in the Rising Star Portfolio category of the competition. There's only one award in this category. You're either winner or nowhere. And I think this is the first time that an underwater photographer has won this award in its many years of running. And I think that this particular shot, I think, is a fantastic and arty image. And it's something I felt was a bit underwhelmed by, was particularly with the underwater pictures in the contest, is there was a lack of aesthetically appealing imagery. It was much more about what you shot than how you shot it. And I think Sage's images really redress that balance in the competition as a whole. I think this picture is a really captivating composition. I love the white background and the two cormorants going in different directions. And here are a couple more from his portfolio. The picture on the right has been awarded in a couple of other competitions, but I think in a portfolio sense, I'm all right with that. It's not about one picture, it's about a body of work, and a very appealing portfolio from the west coast of the States, with a range of techniques and photographic styles that I think really, it's not one person who's very good at one thing. It's really a very diverse underwater portfolio. And yeah, includes many of my favorite shots from the underwater part of the competition.
Yeah, I like Sages a lot. I'm friends with him, so I saw a lot of what he was planning on submitting for this portfolio ahead of time. And I think ended up submitting, because I think you submit 10 and they pick 6 or something like that. And I was kind of surprised at some of the ones that got cut, because he had some really, really cool invertebrate ones in here that that weren't included, which I was kind of surprised with. But Sage has a really unique eye, I think. And like you said, he's good at kind of everything with regards to techniques. And my particular favorite. Oh, I'm missing a couple, I think.
Yeah, I
My
didn't put them
particular
all in the
favorite
show
one.
because, yeah, sorry. There was one
Yeah. So
with the
my particular
rockfish.
favorite one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the his Melody one, the hooded
Mm.
nudibranch, where it's yawning at the camera. But I also really like that one that's been awarded before, the tube snout on eggs on the kelp.
Yeah, that's on
Um,
the
and
right
plus
on
it's
screen now. Yeah.
and plus it's a good conservation story because those kelp forests in Monterey Bay, which is where most of this, maybe all of it was shot, are facing pretty severe setbacks, especially with the urchins, which are featured in one of the pictures here.
Mm.
So I think it also is an important portfolio to bring light to that issue, that there's problems that these places are facing, and they are beautiful, but there's a dark side to it at this point as well. So I think having this portfolio be awarded will help draw attention to that and maybe somehow lead to some sort of conservation of it. Um, but yeah, I like Sage as a person. I like him as a photographer, and he'll send us lots of images. Like, you bastard, because they're really really good, and his technique is fantastic. And I'm always amazed that he'll go and see almost nothing on a dive and still somehow come back with really nice pictures that I wouldn't have actually even thought to shoot, which I think is a testament to his skill and his eye.
So well worth following on Instagram then, by the sound of it. So yeah.
Sage Ono photography.
Right. I think my favorite set of photos or favorite sort of photographic contribution to the competition was Thomas Peshak's portfolio on river dolphins. The underwater photos are great, but it was actually for me the portfolio as a whole. I really love some of the topside storytelling in it, and this was definitely. I just really wanted to give it a mention because I thought it was a stunning bit of photography, and the portfolio award is one of the major awards in the. I think it's kind of the next one down after the overall win. So yeah, really, really fantastic photography, really interesting portfolio, great storytelling, and I look forward to seeing more of the images from Tom's massive Amazon project.
Yeah, I actually think my favorite of his set was the image from above looking down at the dolphin in the water.
Yeah,
Because
with
I've
the trees.
there's pictures before of the river dolphins underwater. There's some really spectacular ones, including in UPY. But I don't think I've ever seen an image quite like that. The dolphin looks so small in this habitat, and
Mm.
I've never seen the top-down perspective before, and it kind of puts it, because usually when you see the images of them, you see them underwater. It's very murky, like in this main one, you'll see the log or the tree or whatever it is. But seeing that picture from above, you kind of can put them in their habitat, which is something I've not really seen before. And it's not quite how I expected it to look. So that was a really cool image for me. And then obviously some of the ones with you have here with the skulls and the tree
Mm.
are quite sad, but they're important pictures for the story.
Yeah, it was a really, really. I really wanted to highlight that. Right, I think we're on now to the underwater category, which is I think the category that's causing debate amongst the underwater photographers around there. I think that the negative comments that I've seen people saying is that they're predominantly quite unattractive images. They're uninspiring. They're not aesthetically pleasing. A lot of them, and they're quite snapshotty. Some of them. I don't feel that's the case about the one that's on screen, which is Matty Smith's shot. I do think if you line up the underwater category of the awarded pictures, this is clearly the standout shot. I've judged this a few times this year in other competitions. I think we commended it or honourable mentioned it in Siena, and I think in UPY we didn't award it. But it's I think it was of the awarded images in the underwater category. It's for me definitely the strongest. It's the wildlife photographer does love a leopard seal. They've awarded so many leopard seals down the years. I think this is the most interesting image of a leopard seal they've awarded. I think so. I like it. I think it's a very different original shot. It's got great character, but it's also got a lovely atmosphere as well. So I of the underwater pictures, this one I do really like. It's whether it's wildlife photographer underwater category level, I think that's where the debate is falling in the community. But of what was awarded, it's for me, it's the strongest one.
So leopard seals might be my favorite animal on Earth. So I'm inclined to like pictures of them. And I agree with you that of the ones that are awarded in this category, I think this is probably my favorite. However, there's one thing that you always used to see with wildlife photographers, if there was an image awarded of a particular animal, usually it was up there with the best pictures you've ever seen of that animal.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many leopard seal images out there, and I think Maddie has others that I prefer to this one. So I think that it's taken a hit for me in that regard because there are so many leopard seal pictures that I think are maybe better than this, and of course that's subjective. But I think he has better ones than this. So I do like the split. I like the mood of it is great. It's really dark and spooky and eerie, and the predatory look on the seal's face is terrifying.
Yeah.
But as a picture, I think he has better leopard seal pictures. And there have been better ones awarded in the competition, so I think that's why I'm kind of biased a little bit against it. But again, if I saw this big on a wall, I'm sure I would be amazed by it.
I really like the things that you pointed out about it. The atmosphere, the mood, the malevolence of the subject,
Yeah.
the lighting. I find it a really, 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 really nice shot. Let's keep going because we've got lots of pictures to get through. Next in the category, the category definitely, I think, awarded pictures this year, and it's always good to analyze what the judges are looking for. I felt that it awarded kind of what you'd shot a little bit over how you shot it. And I think this was a subject that probably appealed to the judges because they were less familiar with it. If you're a European diver, you're quite familiar with broad snout pipefish. That we get them in the south coast of the UK, and they're obviously very dominant in the Mediterranean where they fit very well with the seagrass. I do feel this is quite snapshotty. It's just like there's the subject, click. Doesn't feel like okay. There's some story there because this animal is obviously adapted to this environment, but it's for me not the most remarkable shot. I've seen people online saying that it's not even in focus. It looks like it is to me, but I've not been to the exhibition. So, but yeah, I haven't got it's not a picture that there's anything particularly wrong with. And I think that would say that is the case with a lot of the rest of the underwater category. Nothing wrong with these shots, but they're not really making any jaws hit the floor for me.
I think
if you've got nothing to add, I'll happily move on.
Well, I was just gonna say, like like you said, well, I didn't know that they're found in the UK, so that's cool. Cold water pipefish is pretty sweet. Mm-hmm. I think this would actually be a more interesting image if the pipefish was going in the same way as all of the grass and then showed off the camouflage a bit better. But like you said, this seems kind of snapshotty to me, and there's again similar to the leopard seal. There's a lot of pictures out there of this fish that I think are better. Or more interesting at least. But cool, really cool fish. But I don't necessarily like. This is not a picture that I would have been like, oh, I'm going to go enter that in wildlife photographer. I think it would be a nice keeper for me to have just so I have a record of the fish, but not necessarily one that I would have thought to enter. But hey, that's a skill in and of itself, is choosing the right images to put into a competition. It's not one that I've perfected.
I'm going to move us on to Nicola Remy's shot of the poached egg, which I like this photo for the behavior and the regionality of it. I think photographically that's what it was. I don't think there's anything photographically interesting to say about it. I think it's a picture that will appeal to judges that are looking for creatures that they've maybe not photographed themselves or haven't seen themselves, and like a bit of behavior in the shot. Again, it's what you shot, not how you shot it. For me,
yeah.
It's not, but well chosen by the photographer to appeal to the judges. In that, Nicola's got some stunning photos, and he's obviously chosen this very carefully to fit with what the judges are looking for. And so fair play for him for sort of playing the game well.
Yeah. I mean, I like it's a nice portrait. I like that you can see the teeth on the Port Jackson shark. I don't know if I've ever seen a picture where you can see the teeth. And the behavior is cool, which I think particularly in wildlife photographer counts for a lot more than it does necessarily in some other competitions. Um, but yeah, nice portrait, cool behavior, but
But they do say in the category description it's not just about behavior. It is about aesthetics as well. This category, anyway. It's that's always the interest, is the way the judges go, and this is good advice for future entries. Is maybe bias a bit more towards shots that are piquing their curiosity rather than unnecessarily the sort of beauty shots of the underwater world that a lot of photographers maybe think they should be entering. Right.
I will say, like you
Oh,
said,
sorry, I
he
went on
has.
to another beauty. Sorry.
No, no. I will, but like you said, he has so many really, really cool images that if I were looking at a portfolio of his pictures, this would not have been the one that would have stood out for me. So I don't want to sound like I'm saying that his pictures aren't good. He has fantastic ones. This would not have been my top choice
Which is
among his
why, yeah,
images.
which is why I think the discussion on the judging is interesting. When you know a photographer's work and you see from their work what was chosen to be awarded, it gives you an insight then into, the judges are clearly looking for the what as much as the how you shot it.
Yeah.
So we're now into freshwater again, as we're back into freshwater because we've been in freshwater a lot. With these, I presume this is freshwater with the lampreys. They may be
Yeah.
in the sea, but
This looks freshwatery to me.
yeah. This one, I'm okay with it. I think it's a good choice of subject matter. My issue with this one is, I mean, it's obviously is not an attractive picture. It doesn't feel like the peak of the action. Like,
Mm.
in the middle of the shot, there's some like really cool mouths coming out of the, there's a lot of kind of, I don't know, it feels like a really cool scene, but this doesn't feel like the best shot you would have got from that shoot. Um,
I I think lampreys are horrific fish. They creep me out so much, and maybe that's the fact that they're unusual and creepy and all those mouths. But I do like the picture. I think a lot of it I like because of what they are and because they creep me out. But I would have David's so good at using motion in a lot of his pictures. I'm kind of surprised he chose not to include any sort of motion in this frame, especially because lampreys, especially when they ball up, they're writhing and moving constantly. That I think it would have been really cool to have some motion in here. And I'm not, maybe he has frames with that and they didn't get selected. I don't know.
yeah, I suspect. Yeah, like it feels like the shot you take at the start of the shoot, and then you're like, okay, I need to work this, I need to do that. So
Yeah, so it'd be interesting. I would love to see the rest of, and maybe he has them on Instagram or something like that. I would love to see the rest of these frames, just to see if there's one, again, a subjective one that I particularly like better.
the
But I do
wildlife
think
photographer,
it's
sorry,
cool.
the
So
wildlife
no,
photographer might
sorry.
well put them on Instagram because they often invite winning photographers
Yeah,
to submit
yeah,
more pictures, and so it might be quite interesting to see when they come out, if
yeah,
we prefer them more. But yeah, it just I don't know. And then the final shot, which is a picture of a manatee and a calf. Um, I think there's, I think this one I kind of, it's been out for a while, and my feeling of it is there's nothing wrong with this photo. But that's not, for me, not really enough for the wildlife photographer. I like the mum and the calf, but the calf is kind of a bit animated, but the mum is just not, there's no interaction between the two of them. It's quite nice that there's some grass around them, but I don't know, it doesn't set me alight. This is a manatee shot. And it's not as if manatees are some unphotographed species that, wow, well done for getting the first shot of a manatee. Like some of the other subjects where you can say, okay, we've not had, horn sharks before, or we've not had, lampreys before. There's lots of shots of manatees around.
yeah,
I'd hope to see something I haven't seen before, and I don't feel I get that from this one. There's nothing wrong
yeah.
with it at all. I'd be very happy to have taken it, but yeah, I don't know. It's your neck of the woods, so
Yeah. So this one I think doesn't. This one, because I have seen so many manatees. I have so many manatee pictures. like you said, the baby is super cute. It looks all roly poly. But as an image, I I'm sure I would have saved this one, but it's not one that I would have ever thought to enter in a competition. And I wonder if, if I have not, I don't even bother putting manatees in most competitions because I don't think they, well, little do I, apparently I don't know any better, but I don't think they do well. And clearly that's not the case. But I'm kind of surprised with the proliferation of manatee pictures online that this one would have been awarded, considering how many, in my opinion, more compelling manatee pictures are out there. Because, like you said, there's no interaction. The grass is cool, but there's no crazy light. There's no necessarily interesting behavior. I don't know. It's just this was an odd choice to me when they first did all the preview images, and it's still an odd choice to me now. But that could be a bias on my part.
Let's keep moving on because I did feel more positive about the underwater pictures not in the underwater category. There's this photo here of the Hellbenders fighting. I think the Hellbenders are a cool subject, and I've not seen lots of behavior shots of them. They tend to do a lot of sitting about, from what I can gather from the photos. So I like that behavior. I do think they're a little bit merged in the background on this shot. But I do like the moment. I do like the interaction. I like the species. And I'm particularly in a behavior category, which is what this was in. I think that this ticks all the boxes, and I was very, very content with this being awarded.
Yeah, I was on this trip with Anton's a good friend. I was on this trip with him last year, and I left the morning that so a couple people got to witness this fight. It lasted almost 3 hours, which never happens. Usually when Hellbenders fight, they lock up, they twirl a bit, and they're done. And it lasts, maybe 30 seconds if you're lucky. This one, apparently, they just went at it for almost 3 hours. So a bunch of people got some nice fighting pictures. A little backstory: Anton wasn't even going to enter this one, and I told him, you need to enter it. You never know what the judges are going to be looking for, and he did. And he has some really cool pictures from this series. He has 3 Hellbenders in the frame where some of them are biting each other. He has some, so you never know what they're going to look for, which I guess is why you may as well enter things, even if you're unsure about them. But yeah, Hellbenders have a special place in my heart. Anytime I get to see they're awarded, it's cool for the species, which is cool for all the rest of us who love them. And they have some nasty fights. They'll scar each other up. They'll tear toes and limbs off. They'll tear chunks out of each other's tails. And they have real teeth. So this bite probably didn't feel too good. And I'm glad to see that Anton got awarded and that he got to go see the exhibition, was there in person for it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think
and that helped with attention. He got some cool behavior shots this year too. I don't know if he's going to enter them in anything, so I won't spoil them. But he did the trip again this year and got some more cool behavior pictures.
Awesome. I really like. Yeah, I like this. I think it's it's a good shot for that category. It's good action. I've not seen these behaviors before. There's not lots of people shooting it, so yeah, really nice. Now we move on to the oceans category, and this cool shot by is it Daniel Brown of a tiger shark feeding on a whale carcass. I was slightly surprised about this one being in the oceans category. The oceans category is all about conservation and messages about the importance of those environments. And this, I like the behavior very much. I'm surprised they didn't move this into the underwater category. It feels more of an underwater category type shot to me. I love seeing sharks with natural behavior rather than, we see so many perfect shots of tiger sharks, but they're on tiger shark feeding dives, and it's great to see one feeding naturally. I don't really get that there's a strong ocean message here, apart from that there's 2 megafauna actually in the ocean. But it's photographically it's really nice. It's really nice story in it. It's. I think I've read in the caption of this one that there were loads of sharks around, and I think I'd probably be more interested to see a shot with lots of sharks in than just one. But that's just me.
I really, yeah, like you said, anytime you can see sharks predating, or in this case, scavenging on something naturally, it's really cool because it happens so infrequently that we get to see and especially get to photograph. So I think that's probably what helped this one, stand out. It's similar to the a bunch of years ago when the great whites and tigers were feeding on the sperm whale off of Hawaii, and everybody got those pictures of them, tearing chunks out of the whale. I think that was really cool.
Mm.
But I think, like you said, something important, that the it's a really cool picture photographically, but not necessarily for the category, which I think is something people have to think about. Is
Mm.
that just because your image is really, really cool doesn't necessarily mean it jives with the particular category, which I think is
But it still
important to
gets an
separate.
audience. So.
Yeah, but I think it's not a knock on the picture. It's just it's how it's
Mm.
that's more of like a judging
Yeah.
thing. Um, because as a picture, this one's really cool. The tiger shark looks like it's looking right at the camera. He actually has it biting a piece out of the whale, which is cool.
Mm.
And I like all the remores in the background. Like you said, it would have been interesting to see it with more sharks. But that's harder to necessarily plan for if they're not all on it at once.
Mm.
And I don't know if this is. I've seen other images, I think, from this, unless it happens frequently, but from this feed that I think were really cool. So but this is a really nice picture, and I think the eye contact and the fact that it's actually biting the rib is probably what set it apart.
Okay. Next up is from the photojournalism category, and it's Alvaro Herrero Lopez, or Mikan as we all know him, photo of the humpback whale tangled in a buoy. It's a very heartbreaking composition. It's obviously a very well-known picture. It won the beginning of last year, so the beginning of 2023. It won the Marine Conservation Photographer of the Year award. I think it also won overall in Siena as well last year. So I'm very surprised that it was awarded in the Wildlife Photographer with at least two major big contest wins under its belt. And I know it's been in lots of other places too.
I was going to say, I think it's been an ocean photographer and all those too.
Yeah, and so I'm surprised. I mean, I guess some of those were running concurrently to the Wildlife Photographer, but in this particular case, so I'm surprised the Wildlife Photographer awarding a picture that's been in those. I think the picture is thoroughly deserving of an award. I don't think the Wildlife Photographer should award pictures that are awarded the year before for their own reputation. It lessens my want to be part of the contest if you've got, if it's not where people are saving their best shots up for. So yeah, I find that aspect of it I find disappointing. Photographically, it's a heartbreaking, emotionally charged, important, and beautiful image of a cetacean, and yeah, I'm very happy it was awarded for all those reasons. And the wildlife photographer is going to give it a huge platform to be seen by even more people.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. Pretty
Yeah,
much
so yeah,
echoed
we
my
got to
thoughts.
keep going as well. We've been going on for ages already.
Yeah,
I
no
think
worries.
this is our last one, and this is taken by Oriol Chias Diaz, who many underwater photographers will know. His father, Jordi Chias, who's been awarded in the wildlife
Oh,
photographer a lot of times. I like this as a young person's underwater photo. It's an available light shot, I guess taken probably snorkeling, and that kind of feels what you'd expect a young person to be doing. I think sometimes we get the young person and they're down there shooting a Z9 with strobes on a dive. It's kind of, it doesn't feel quite like that's a young person following their hobby. It's kind of someone who's been handed, a parent's spare camera. And this feels like, it's a local Mediterranean subject shot by a Mediterranean-based photographer, shot in available light in the shallows, a really nice composition, taken some time to sneak up on the cuttlefish and create a really pleasing picture. And it's, for me, exactly the sort of underwater picture I'd like to see in a youth category. So I
yeah,
really
this
like this shot.
11 to 14 age group, I think.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I would have been lucky to get a picture, a subject in the frame when I was
yeah.
diving and taking pictures in that age. Like
Mm,
I'd have had half the cuttlefish in the frame, maybe the butt end of it. Um, so yeah, it's really cool, and like you said, it's cool to see an underwater image because usually those categories are dominated by mammals or birds.
yeah.
So it's cool to see an underwater one. And I
Yeah,
don't know
all
if this
shot
won, it
with
win
with
or
Z
yeah.
nines and 600 mils. But it's,
Yeah.
I like it when it's realistic subject matter, and it gives you hope that these photographers will stay. And one of the things they said on the night was how, the young photographers, how, a lot of them went on to become well known. Well, that's not true. It's nearly always children of keen photographers, and very few of the young photographers seem to transition into being adults, because I kind of feel that it's anyway. But this does feel like that hopefully Oriole will stay shooting underwater. So that's our last one. So we just need to wrap this up now. Let me get us both back on screen. There we are. So I guess I'll wrap it up. Thank you everyone for watching the Underwater Photography Show. I hope you enjoyed that critical look at the pictures. As we said at the beginning, it's no point of us just going, these are all great, click, click, click. And I think it was interesting to analyse a little bit about what we felt the judges were looking for, and maybe that will help you in choosing your pictures for next year. So thanks for watching the Underwater Photography Show. We'll be back again soon.